Well, hopefully the neighbour's lawnmower has stopped for a few minutes, which will allow me to do this brief recording so that you can all have a little bit more of a closer look at these new models from Revolution Trains. These are the PCV Semflow wagons in blue circle livery, 1 to 148 scale or N gauge, and it arrives in this outer sleeve because you've got 3 wagons per pack. So the triple packs, there are 7 of these triple packs available, 4 with blue circle branding, of which this pack is 1, and 3 packs in sort of plain silver livery without the blue circle branding on them. So the ones with in plain silver livery have tops numbers. These ones are pre-tops numbers, being of the sort of still branded variants of the wagons. Obviously, same familiar packaging from Revolution Trains that we've come to know. Very sturdy outer boxes there. Easily accessible models inside with this little protective sleeve. And if we whip that out, then it allows us to have a closer look at each of these models. Now, bear with me here because these are small, obviously, N gauge, and this camera I know is not the easiest to work with when it comes to zooming in on things, but first of all, let's have a look at the branding around the wagon. Now, the lettering and numbering is very crisp. You can't fault that. Obviously, the distinctive shape of the wagons there is beautifully captured. You start to see details on the underside there. Just sort of showing through, and regarding the couplers, obviously this is something, if I'm not an N-gauge modeller, however if I was modelling N-gauge, these couplers I think would be the first thing to go. If running these in a train, obviously for obvious reasons many N-gauge modelers retain the couplings because of the hassle required with changing couplings, also because these work, they're reliable, but for realism I think I'd want to get rid of them, and if running these in a long rake, I'd probably want to look at a more discrete coupling mechanism. But because of these couplings, you'll note to the underside there that the brake beams which run between the two, can you see that? The 2 brake blocks on either side are not represented on the other side of the axle, and that's just purely because this coupling mechanism needs to be able to move, you see, like that between the axle. So that would foul. Just a slight downside there. I mean, it's hardly noticeable, but it's usually the end wagon of a rake of these where you would notice that anyway, and it's still perfectly modelable if you remove one of these couplings at the last wagon of your rake and perhaps put one of those in. Although in all likelihood you would have a guards van at the rake of the end of the rake anyway. So filler caps again, nicely detailed at the top there. Number of separately applied details to these wagons is really impressive. I mean, not only is the chute there at the bottom very distinctive and very obvious, mostly because it is silver. Obviously in operation these didn't last in that colour very long, so this is where some weathering will sort of harmonise all of the underframe colours of your wagon to some extent there. But if you note carefully around the wagon, you've also got the reservoirs, obviously for operating the discharge chutes there, and you can even see the little pipes running out of the reservoirs as well. So these sort of snake their way along the underside and discreetly tuck away around the chassis. Now, beautifully free running, can't fault that. Axle boxes with the little red stripe to denote that they must use lithium grease only, and the silver of the wagons has a nice sheen, sort of a satin sheen to them. The only slight fault, as I've said in the review, that I can find is that that logo. If you just note, it's slightly on a bit of a wonk to the left hand side, and regardless of the wagon in each pack, as I shall now demonstrate, if we just leave that one there and get another wagon out of its packaging, they all sort of seem to be affected a little bit. I mean, it's not like the end of the world. You only really notice it because I've mentioned it, but if you were just glancing at these passing in a rake of of similar wagons. It's hardly something that is sort of the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination, and when these are weathered anyway, it would probably draw even less attention to that particular aspect. Vacuum reservoirs again to the end of the wagons, at one end only. And again separately applied. The handbrake wheels, which you can see there, there's only a tiny little bit of flash on these. I'm not sure how easy it is to pick out, and this is really being, I mean, this is almost like finding faults for the sake of finding faults, but in fact you can hardly notice it on this wagon at all. No, nothing there at all, no problem at all with that one. The underframe has these 4 etches which are applied to the outside to sort of replicate the distinctive hollowed underframe, or reinforced underframe if you like, because of the weight of the tank being applied to that area over the W irons. And you can see the discharge pipes as well, snaking their way along the side of the wagon there. Yeah, all told, fantastic wagons. A great effort from Accurascale, producing these on behalf of Revolution Trains. Obviously they had the reputation with the 00 gauge versions of the wagons preceding it, so these are naturally equally of interest to modellers, but for 2mm to the foot rather than 4mm to the foot. So a fantastic new addition, and we'll look forward to seeing many more arrivals from Revolution Trains in the coming years.